This is La Pizarra, a place where we explore creative minds in the entertainment industry on both sides of the mic and the camera. Here is your host, Nikki Mondellini.
Welcome to another episode of La Pizarra. My name is Nikki Mondellini, and I'm very happy that you're joining us today. Have you ever wondered what the life of a casting director is like? Well, stick around because you're about to find out. My guest is the one and only Brenda Ambrize. She is a casting director and producer with over 20 years of experience. After working on both sides of the camera for several years, Brenda started Ambrize Production Services in 1997, a company that handles all aspects of casting and production. Some of her recent projects include producing for American Express Delta Travel Yellowstone, NBC PGA promos, casting for Advanced Auto Parts, HEB Holiday Campaign for the Hispanic market, VH1's My True Crime Story, the feature film The Answer to My Prayer, and USAA's Army-Navy spot. Brenda also freelances as a supervising producer for an in-house video studio in the tech industry. But before we go on with the interview, I want to remind you that all episodes of La Pizarra are available on nikkimondellini.com/podcast, where you can also download for free my new ebook, How to Deal with the No's of the Industry, which is in Spanish, but you can also sign up for our monthly newsletter, which is in English and Spanish. And that one has previews of upcoming episodes as well as resources for your creative business. And now, let's go on with the interview. Brenda, hi. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Absolutely. Looking forward to it.
Okay. Well, I have a bunch of questions about the casting process and everything, which is your specialty, that and production. But before that, I just want to know a little bit about you, about what got you started down this path in the entertainment business.
What's interesting is I always loved entertainment, even as a child. I loved to read, so I think that piqued my interest in drama and stories. Because I was reading since probably I was 3 years old, and my mom and my dad loved to read, so they really encouraged us to read. Took us to the library all the time, and so I think through books for me that helped me to escape into another life, and I loved just the mystery. I think at one time I thought that I was going to be a mystery book reader because I love figuring out things. And I thought, well, I'm going to write books. But even as a kid, I was producing talent shows in my neighborhood. Like my neighbors had this garage and we would do little plays and skits. And I was producing it back then. I loved to dance. I took dance, ballet and tap. And so again, it was just, I was always interested in that. But when I was a kid, that seemed so far out of my reach. Unlike today where everybody has a YouTube channel or they're TikTok stars or influencers or whatever. At that point, it still felt like that was just a dream and it was just so out of reach. But I grew up dancing, and when you're in high school, you sort of pick one or the other. But as soon as I hit college, I took my first drama class, and that was it. I switched my major from I went for pre-law, and I switched my major to drama. And my parents were like, what are you going to do with that? And I'm like, I don't know, but I'll figure it out. But that's kind of what piqued it. It's like I was always interested in that. And when I took theater, it was a very experimental theater when I first got into it. When I thought I was going to be doing Oklahoma and the big stage things, and we were doing really weird things. But it kind of opened up, like just to try other things and not just stick with what I thought was, what I thought that I wanted to do. So that's my interest and my desire to be involved in some way in that arena was from when I was very little. But I never saw me doing what I'm doing now. After I got my degree, I thought I was going to New York. I was going to be a theater actor because that was real acting. That's what I thought, I didn't want to do commercials. I didn't want to do, TV. But again, that's probably also just probably an attitude that was fostered in my theater courses, right? Where that was the real thing. But I got out of college and I was teaching theater. I was teaching fine arts. I was teaching dance. And I was the fine arts director at my church, and I was directing a play, and someone walked in to audition, and he was in the film industry. And so after we met and we talked, and I had cast him in a small role in my play, a production came up in his realm that said, hey, we need a dance coordinator, a talent coordinator. And he says, I know just the person. And so they reached out to me. And really, that's how it started. This company was a really big company. They sort of did everything in San Antonio. And I got hooked in with them. And so I started searching for dancers, to come on to this show. It was an international Hispanic show. It was supposed to be the Latino American Bandstand. And they would bring in international artists that I didn't even know because I didn't listen to that kind of music. And it wasn't Tejano and it wasn't Conjunto. It was the international flavor of people from Mexico and Argentina and Spain. And so it was very interesting. And I started looking for talent in clubs and such. And then when we got to the actual show, we would tape 4 shows a month. One Saturday, we'd have 4 shows we would do, and it would come on like, I don't know, I think it was Saturday afternoons or Sunday afternoons. And I had to literally get out on the dance floor to help people move, react to camera, have fun with it. And so then through that, I ended up doing one little bit every show. And I brought in a former dancer that I had taught. And we would dance one number with the host of the show, who at that time was a very popular singer. He had just been in a telenovela, so everybody knew him and was in love with him. And so his name was Franco. And so we would do a little spiel. He would sing one of his songs, and we would get out and dance with him. And that's kind of how it all started. But I was doing it all part-time. I would do it after I got out of my regular job, and I would work 2 weeks out of the month finding dancers. We'd do the show. And but from there, I met other people, other professionals in the field, and they just thought, you're good with people, you're good with youth. So if there was a big promo for Coca-Cola and they'd have 200 kids that they needed managing and wrangling, they're like, Brenda, and wow. Or little dance bits. And so, it really just started that way, just using the skills that I already had, which was managing youth, managing plays, managing dance, things like that. I would get called into different things that I didn't even know about. Like there's a show in Holland, and we need some graphics. So can you come in and dance a little routine? And we will use CGI to create your moves. And then that was going to be the opening for that dance show. So there were things that wow. that were out of the realm of what I understood to do. And so I was like, oh, you're going to pay me that to come in for an hour? Okay, I'll be there. So and that's really how it started. I met the right people. I know in this business, we always say, how do you meet? But it's like I met people and opportunities opened up at great times where I was able just to walk straight in and do things. And it really came back to relationships. People that I met, they trusted me after I, was able to do what they wanted me to do. And I think many times that's what I tell people today. I'm like, you have to make your own opportunities, but at the same time, recognize when there's opportunities for you. Yeah. And so that's how I did it. This company liked casting their own projects. So they didn't hire a casting director. And there was another young man who'd been doing it. And I went in to help him once. And then I took over. It was just one of those things. He was moving and they're like, oh, you can continue doing it. That's really how casting started. It was just this one company who said, you work with people. Why don't you cast our projects for us? So
wow. Yeah. What an amazing break. But definitely, I think you did have all the elements for it. And that's why it just started progressing from there and from one project to the other. And so that's wonderful how it all developed. And so then when is it that you started your own production and casting company?
Well, I think that all was happening, probably, the early this dates me, but, there you have it. Like the late 80s, early 90s, I was working on the show and working on these little things. And in 95, I had a friend that was opening his own CGI company. And the same person who had walked in to audition for me, we had become friends, and I had become friends with his whole family. And he was leaving to open his own CGI company. And I went in that summer to help them open the office. And halfway through the summer, he goes, "Why don't you stay on and produce for us?" And I went, "Well, I've never produced computer graphics stuff, you know?" And he's like, "That's fine. I think you're sharp enough to do it." And so it was like everything almost that I've done in this business, Nikki, has sort of been baptism by fire. Like,
Wow.
Can you do it? We trust that you can do it. And I'm like, okay. You know, and it's like, let me go find out, learn. I told a director friend that I worked with once, he was bidding a job and he had bid it with me and he had bid it with someone else. And, you know, that person said, "You know, she's kind of green in the industry. She's pretty new." And so he came back to me, and I think back now that it was a challenge. He wanted to see how I would react to a little bit to an obstacle and adversity. And I remember that I thought for a moment, I'm like, don't just answer right away. I thought for a moment, then I said, well, he's exactly correct. I said, I haven't been in the business as long as he's been in the business. But what I do know is I will work hard. I will get what you need. What I don't know, I'll find out, and I'll do my very best to do the best job I know to do for you. And he says, good enough for me. And so then he was really my first director, and I worked with him for years. But it's different things like that I tell people sometimes. It's like, you have to be confident in what you can do, but be totally honest, because you don't know everything. And even after all these years, I don't know everything. I'm constantly learning. And I think that especially, and this may be pushing a little further, but the pandemic for me was like a prime example of sink or swim. So you're going to learn new skills. You're going to find different ways to do things. You're going to put yourself still out there so that you can continue working. So you can continue working in the industry that you love. And so I loved seeing what everyone did during this time. Like yourself, for instance.
Yes. I mean, we all had to adapt. We all had to make things work and learn, just like you. I mean, a lot of people that for example, in the voiceover industry and in big cities that usually went to professional studios for, video games or animation, dubbing, and anything like that, or even commercials, right? And all of a sudden you have to record from home. So, many times big companies were able to send like recording kits and everything for actors to do that. But other times, no, it fell onto the actors to have to procure everything for themselves. And so it was a bit unnerving, but everybody learned so much from that. Definitely. And for you, for example, that, what are the things that you like now that have changed from the pandemic that are not going back to the way it was before? Like you and I were having a conversation not so long ago about how everything is virtual casting, all self-tapes. And so how much of that is really saving time for you, and how much of it is you wish things were sort of like the way they used to be?
Well, I think probably the thing I miss the most is being able to interact with talent. After you've been in the business for especially as long as I have, I've seen people grow up. I've seen kids that I saw when they were little and now they're teens, and you see people go through their different stages of life. And so that's a wonderful thing, because you know them, you know what they can do. You have confidence in being able to extract the performance that you want, those kinds of things. So there's nothing that beats seeing somebody in person. So I will always miss that. Yeah. And I imagine that I think that there are still arenas in which it's important to actually be able to bring people in and talk to them. And I know in speaking to different people or speaking with different people that's probably more in film, maybe TV, where you still are going through that virtual, self-tape for the first, second, third round. And then maybe the fourth round is when the director wants to interact with the talent. So I think that's what I miss the most when I see people, and maybe in our EcoCast or the live virtual callbacks. I love it when people are like, "Oh, I've missed you. I've missed seeing you," and it's the same for me. What I do like about what happened in having to do the virtual casting or the self-taping, is that it has allowed us to see so many more people than we would, because I go long. If I start at 9 in the morning or 10, I would go till 7, like however many people I needed. And even within that, because as a casting director, I like to spend time with people, so I'm not rushing them in and out. I started as an actor. And I thought, what is somebody going to get from my slate? They can't possibly get anything from just like, hi, and I'm out of there. I'm like, what do they get? And I always had an empathy for actors, because I thought, first of all, especially if you're coming in from out of town, you're driving. And all the challenges that can occur with being in traffic, having to get someplace, and then you have to arrive, then you have to get that energy back, and then you see a casting director for maybe, if you're lucky, 10 minutes, and then you're back out the door and in the car and heading out. And I remember I was at an audition, and I walked out to the front, and this actor said, "Oh my gosh, how long am I going to have to wait?" And I don't think we were way behind, but he was like, he walked in and saw several people waiting. And he was like, I had to drive, my trip over here was so long. So we're thinking this is in Austin. We're thinking he's driving in from Houston or Dallas. And my assistant said, "Where did you drive in from?" He goes, "North Austin." It was like, okay, talk to one of these people who just drove 4 hours to get here for an audition.
Exactly.
But I understand that. I understand the frustration. As an actor, I would think, I'm driving, you get behind because of an accident, you're running into an audition, and you do it, you get out in your car, and you're just like, oh, bad. And so I felt like with the virtual auditions, people can make it work within their time frame. They can take their lunch early and go to a quiet place. They can close the door to their office. They can make it work early or late. And I just think that now I can send a casting out like I just did this week, and I got, probably close to 1,000 submissions. Now that's a lot of people to go through.
Oh my goodness.
But I could invite a third of them back that I would not have been able to do if I was seeing them in person, because I was only going to see, and I have seen 150 people in a day if I have just seen them, but that's unusual. Most people were seeing, I remember someone saying, "Oh my gosh, you're seeing 50 people. That's a lot." I'm like, that's really not a lot for me, because I would try to see as many people as I can. So in that respect, I love that. And I have to say that I have directors that have said they hope they never go back to in-person
casting,
because, again, they're seeing more people. They can quickly go through people if they just think that person didn't do it for them, so they're also able to, not just see 70 people a day or 80 people a day or whatever it is. They're seeing as many people as I can potentially put before them. And they're seeing more people than they're seeing actors that perhaps would not drive down from a city, but will drive down for a booking. So now it's opened up their realm of who they're seeing. And then I think it also has allowed talent to really focus on, I think, their performance, because they just have to turn the light on and walk into their room. And so I think the distractions are gone. And so I think in that respect, I think that has been good for everyone. And then I think financially, it's just easier. I always had a lot of empathy for people who first round, second round, callbacks, and then they go to the booking, and you're going, they've done 3 or 4 round trips already, and and that's a lot.
It is. It is tough,
especially in a market like ours, where if you want to work, you're going to go to everywhere that's asking you to come.
Yes. No, for sure. I mean, I remember every time I had to drive to Austin for an audition, it was going to take me at least 7 to 10 hours of that day just to be prepared, drive over there, depending on which part of Austin, and taking into account the number of people that were going to be there. And then just, of course, the audition was 1-2 minutes, and that was it, and out. But then, go back, then you're hungry, then you want to eat something. And then, of course, the drive back, and then you hit traffic again. So, yes, that was, it was really frustrating. And then, the callback and then the booking, like you said, it's definitely frustrating. But yeah, I mean, right now it's a lot easier to do it that way. Though, I don't know. I mean, sometimes I feel that there's several things that we also have to learn with technology and how to feel more comfortable with just doing it on our self-tape. So what are some of the pet peeves that you have, or things that you see in tapes that come in and you're like, please, people, don't do this, something that you really wish actors wouldn't do. I mean, just to make your job easier and to make ours, just be on the same page.
Before we go on with the interview, I want to tell you about Squadcast, the platform that I'm using to record most of the episodes of La Pizarra. Besides having excellent sound quality, your guests can join the session from a computer or their mobile device from anywhere in the world. All they need is a stable connection. Squadcast has now joined forces with Descript, the editing platform that generates a transcript while you are editing. Now you can open Descript directly from Squadcast and start editing video and audio right away. Check out all the details at squadcast.fm/?ref=La Pizarra. This super long link is in the show notes. And once you click on it, you can try Squadcast for free for 7 days, and you can decide which plan best fits your needs. Squadcast has other advantages, like the possibility of having up to 9 people in a recording session or in a virtual meeting. And you can download your mixed and mastered audio files with Dolby sound quality. Try it out with a link in the show notes.
I think, and I was going to say, because we encountered some of these when I first got on too, is you want to be prepared. And I understand that there was times where something might have happened and a person wasn't able to be as prepared as they thought. But I think more than anything, even before we might have done an occasional self-tape for the first round, I think, if anything, as an actor, I've always told people, you're your own best advocate. You're your own best cheerleaders. So make sure that you're doing everything you can to put yourself in the best light. Because unfortunately, I know people. So if I'm seeing them in person, I can say, let's do that again and try this. Mm-hmm. But you can't do that on a self-tape. And so so I try to be very, very specific about instructions. But I think more than anything, I think the very first thing is people have to read the instructions. Now maybe I know I'm very detailed. I try to be very detailed with what I want. I give examples, things like that. But to read everything, because so many times the answers to your questions are in the document that's attached. Secondly, one of the most important things I tell people is make sure we can see you well, we can hear you well. Make sure that you have a non-busy background, so that you're the only people, the only thing that we are paying attention to, and to make sure that all their equipment is working well. And lastly, just to make sure you have a good internet connection, because I can tell you that in callbacks, that's the first thing. I can hear a director in my ear going, let's move on. When somebody's,
they freeze.
their technology is not working for them. And I'll say, okay, let's try this again. Now, I was going to say one of the interfaces that we use, I'm able to throw them back in the waiting room and say, texting them going, let's try to get this going. But some of it is just, it just doesn't work out. And so I think that's probably the most important thing. I send that out always. Work on your lighting, work on your sound, make sure we can see you well, make sure your internet is working well so that you give yourself the best opportunity to shine. But if all we're looking at is like your pixelated, your audio and your video are not syncing up, the director's ready to move on.
I understand. Yeah. It's time is money, and you got to get things done. You have to select the people that you need.
Right.
And, yeah, man, that is so hard. And speaking about like if there's scene 1, scene 2, and the slate, what do you prefer? Everything in one file, or you want separate files? What works better?
I prefer separate files because people can click. And I think that I can also maybe remove something that I think is not working as well. And so if I think, I love first take and third take, second take, then I can remove anything. I used to be able to do more editing because then I would try to make sure I was putting in, the best things that were working. And so I may do that occasionally. But at this point, I'm thinking, I like to be able to look at them and then say, nope, let me hide that take. I think these 2 takes are best. So for me, I prefer that other than one long clip.
One long video. Yeah, exactly.
Right.
And so, for example, do you usually ask, or you specify that in the specs, that if you want 1, 2, or 3 takes?
I do.
Yeah. Okay.
I do. I'll specify that at least 2 takes. I never ever. I don't want people to give me a 30-minute audition unless it's warranted. But I do like at least 2 takes, and I'm hoping that when you say that, they understand that I want them to show me their range and what they're doing, so
of
that.
course.
And sometimes I get the exact thing, and so I do love the actors they're more intuitive. They understand. They're going to give that to you. And I try to say that in the instructions as well. It's like, let me know what you can do. The director's looking for this, so let's see how you can give him that. Now, again, that's not to take away from what an actor brings to a particular character, because I have seen times where a director will say, wow, I love the way he did that. That wasn't anything that I would have done that way. And so, that's what an actor brings to a role, but at the same time, I will give instructions like, this is what I want to see in your slate. Give me a little personality profile that tells me more about you. I don't want to know I'm an actor. I know you're an actor. You're already standing in front of me. I want to know more about like you, like what makes you tick, or, something I may not know, like, hey, I just came back from, wherever, and this was amazing. It just, it helps me see them in a different light. So it feels like I get to see a little bit more about who they are and what makes them go. And so that's an important part for me as well.
And also, I would say, maybe in those 2 takes or in every one of those instructions, and if people give you exactly what you're asking for, you will see that person is easy to direct, right? That is someone who is going to be able to pick up all the instructions and be able to give exactly what you need or what the director needs, and be able to just assume that and give it right away, right? So.
And that is great, because that's exactly what a director will say. He goes, he doesn't, not a lot of range, or I'm going to have to work really hard on set with him. So I like everything about him, but it was just this. And so it's interesting because, again, like, I know actors pretty well. I know some actors better than others, but, like when you've seen people for so long, I'm like, you can get that out of them. Or I think just give them another opportunity. And I think that's where my role comes as a casting director. It's like, okay, they're better than that. They're not having a good day today, but try this, or we're already deciding and they can't decide on a role and they've got this, but they're not real enthusiastic about their options. I'm like, you should look at this person again, because I think you might have missed them. And it happens. You're seeing so many people, and then they come back up. Okay, put them back up on the screen. Let's take a look at them. And they're like, oh, yeah, wow. Yeah, let's throw them in the mix. And so I think that you are very right. Time is very limited, especially because productions change so much. They want so much in one day. Mm-hmm. And so they are looking for actors who are quick, who get it, who've got that range, who can switch and are not intimidated by someone saying, no, I don't want it that way. Try it this way. And so, that is one thing that I like to emphasize to actors is like, don't get married to your performance. Don't get married to the way you did it. Be open to instruction, because the director is only going to be interested for that short amount of time. And if he wants you to do something and you don't get it or you're not listening, then he'll like, okay, well, let's move on. And it'll be as simple as that. Let's move on, when I know that person could have probably done it. Mm-hmm. So, yeah. And after that, it's like they're not interested anymore.
Yes. So, my goodness. So, yeah, be careful of what you do and just give everything you want and give contrasting takes so they know your range, or they can see that you have a range. And when you're talking about those 1,000 videos that you're watching, my God, that number keeps going on in my mind. I'm like, are you serious? How long does it take you to just go through 1,000 videos?
Well, I try to watch as I go along. So let's just say now I give people 5 days to get their submissions in. There are some people that same day I send out an invite, I'm getting videos. Like there are some people who are just on it. Yeah. And then, but the majority of people, for instance, if I set a timeline for tomorrow at 10, I'm getting a lot of them right before 10 o'clock. So they're just, whether they just took that long to decide, they did it over the weekend, or they did it and then we need to upload it or whatever it is. But I try to watch over because that's just overwhelming all in one day. And so I do try to watch every single thing that comes through. And so as they're coming in and I see there's 5 of them, I'll watch those 5. There's 10 more the next day. And so I try to get them in little chunks like that. Yeah. And I'm going to say something similar to that. In 2 projects in this last year, when I sent the links, the director was so overwhelmed with how many options there were that he was like, I can't do this. You need to cull it down for me and just send me who you liked. And so then I remember getting off the phone and saying, okay, so who's directing this? And so, I'm happy to do it, but I felt like, I thought, wow, you got all these great options and you don't want to go through them. But I understood there's just so many things that he had to do. They were scouting, they were doing many other production related things. And he just thought, I can't come back tonight and go through even 500 of them, 300. I think I'd given him 300 options. Okay.
And so from 1,000, you narrow it down to 300, and still he's like, it's way too much.
Well, let me tell you that, though. I never leave people out. I don't. I know some people do. I don't. Now, I may get 1,000 submissions, and I might send out, 400 invitations. And my rule of thumb has always been that I usually get about 30% back, 40% back. So not everyone who I invite bothers to submit an audition. It could be they have a conflict on a shoot day or not available for a callback. So there's some of that. But which is why I end up inviting so many people, because I know that I'm not going to get all of that back. But I always feel, unless it's just really bad, audio-wise or video-wise, or they only submitted a slate but not a performance or what such, I feel like if that person showed up and took the time to submit an audition, they should be seen. So I go ahead and submit everyone that comes. But at that time, I had sent him about 300. And he was like, I can't do that. Narrow it down to about 7 each. I'm like, oh my gosh. I didn't. I came back and I still gave him about 30 people per role, and just thought, okay, here's the 90. You can go through 90 people. And I made him do that because he would have been happier to go through 30. So that happens very infrequently. Okay. But yeah, that's kind of the process of it. I've always in talking with other colleagues, when we put our specs out, we try to be very, very specific. I'm not just saying, any ethnicity, male age 30. I really try to give some characteristics of what I think we're looking for and such. But sometimes it feels like they just threw the kitchen sink at it, because you're going, okay, that person is not a 30s, 40s mom. That looks like somebody who's still in college. Mm-hmm. And again, I understand that you can be in college and have kids. That's not the point of it. It's like it's so off of the spec that was requested. Yeah. And so in those things as well, when you know people, you also know that's a very old headshot. And if I didn't know them, I might select them. And so again, in that respect, that's part of what you miss, because you do get to know people, you get to know what they're doing, you get to see their growth, and so I can look at a picture and say, well, that person's perfect, but don't look at the headshot because they don't look like that anymore. Yeah. And then recommend, hey, get a new headshot when you can, because I think you would be booking so much more. People could actually see, like you either look 10 years too young or you're looking 10 years too old, and it doesn't show who you are. Mm-hmm. And so anyway, but it's
so please look like your headshot, like your most recent headshot, right?
Look like who you are, because that's also clients and directors in my ear is like, okay, they sure don't look like what we thought they were going to look like and such. Now obviously now we have the advantage of being able to see them beforehand. But many times when they wanted to just like, hey, let's just do a headshot cast, I was like, that is not a good idea, because these folks don't look like this anymore. So I think, yes, that's very important. Look how you look. How you look.
Mm-hmm. And I want to ask you about typecasting. So many times, and this, I'm speaking of personal, I have to confess, of personal experience, but it's happened to other people that I know, that in the specs, I mean, it's all in my profile, speak Spanish 100%, like a native, whatever. And they're looking for a Latina woman. So I do my casting and I show it and I send it, but someone goes like, wait a minute, she doesn't really look Hispanic. Mm-hmm. So that has happened many times. So what do you do that? I mean, because people that speak Spanish and in other countries, they don't only look as one type. They can look many different ways. I mean, in different skin tones or hair color and stuff. And so how is it like? Is it like very narrow there, like, oh no, if it's a Latina woman, she definitely needs to have darker hair, brown eyes, or whatever. So how do you handle that?
I think that is it depends on who you have as your creative. And so if you are doing sort of a national spot, then that's when there's over the years, there's been so many little cue words that they give you, for what they're looking for. And you learn like, okay, I know that they say this, but this is really what they want. For instance, let's go in ages. We want a 45-year-old mom. And I'm like, they think they want a 45-year-old mom, but they don't. They want somebody that's probably like mid to late 30s. And they're like, why? I said, I'm just telling you. So I always hedge my bets. I'm like, okay, so I'm going to give them those mid 40s mom, but I'm also going to give them some late 30s moms, maybe even go tweak it and go a little bit younger, because many times they think they know what they want, but they may not. And that's not to say at all, then just their minds are thinking this is what it is. And then they realize, oh, this is what a 45-year-old mom looks like. This is what a 35-year-old mom looks like. I'm going to get back to your question on this, but I've always told people, like, I look young, I think I can do this. I'm like, okay, you really look great. And you may look young for your age, but if I put you in a room with a bunch of 20-year-olds, you're going to look like a 32-year-old. And there's nothing wrong with that. They're looking for a 22-year-old. So I always tell people, you may just look amazing, but, when you're around the actual age of what they're looking for, you will be able to tell that. So I go back to creatives know what they want, or they think they know what they want very well. So I may have one creative and they say, we want Latinas and we want them to look like South Texas. So then I know what they're looking for with South Texas. They are wanting the darker hair. They're wanting the, what we call más morenitas, whereas if we're shooting something that's going to be national, then they're looking for Mexico City type looks where you have the lighter skin, the lighter hair. You may have blue or green eyes, and so it really depends. For a long time, the Colombia look was very, very popular because it had the fairer skin but the darker hair, and it had the very neutral Spanish, which is what they wanted, because it played better across. They didn't want anyone to be able to know where they were from, so they could be more representative of everything. So, one of the specs we would give was to, dialect neutral, and so I think, again, it goes back to where the market is, who they're looking to market to. So here in Texas, it's like, okay, well, this is going to show in South Texas, San Antonio on down. And, or this is going to be in Dallas and Houston and Austin, or this is going to be up in Northeast part of the nation, or this is playing. And so I think it goes back to, it really goes back to that. And it goes back to who the creative is and what they're thinking they want. I did some casting in Chicago. I did some casting in New York. I've done some casting in California, Miami, and I can tell you that the groups are different. I did some casting in Miami, and I needed a grandmother, and I could not find a grandmother that looked like a grandmother they wanted to look like a grandmother. I had grandmothers that looked really good and very young and dressed that way. And so I ended up having to find, fly my abuelita in from San Antonio, Texas. Because it was like, oh no, everybody had a tan, everybody looked great. It's like they did, but again, in that creative's mind, their abuelita looked like an abuelita, the little, short hair and maybe the glasses and moderately fit. It didn't have to, it's just, they just wanted somebody comfortable that looked like somebody you could squeeze. And so it really goes back to who the creative has in their mind. And we've had to fight that because, in your case, I've had a colleague say, Nikki is fluent Spanish. We should submit her, even if she doesn't look, like the specs. And we do that. And I know I do that. It's like, okay, so this particular actor probably doesn't look as Latino as they want them to look, but they're so good. And so the acting and the accent is going to win over. And then, it'll work. And so I think, especially because I think there's been so many strides in the Latino market, that they're beginning to understand that there's so many of us that all look different. Yeah. We speak a little bit different. We may have some different experiences. And so there's some diversity there. And I think that that's good, when we don't all look alike, we don't all live in the same areas. It it's a little frustrating on my end sometimes when you see some of the stereotypes, that you still see, because you're going, you still have this idea that this is how it is, or and it can affect everything, as far as like what type of houses we live in, what type of decor, are we trying to get this across? And it all goes back to just, again, the market. So if you're casting for the Rio Grande Valley, then they have an idea of what they want. If you're casting for San Antonio and Corpus Christi, if you're casting for Austin and Dallas, it's like, or other parts of the country, it's definitely, they have their idea of what that particular look should be, and so I love when somebody comes in and knocks them back, and they're just so excited, that, oh my gosh, this person is so great. And so I do know that we do try to push back against that, and we always try to bring people, even if they don't fit that exact spec, but they fit in every other way, then we want to give everyone an opportunity.
Okay. All right, then I'll take a note and I'll do those auditions more confidently instead of thinking, nah, why bother? They're not going to pick me again because I don't look Latina, just.
Well, and again, I think that you're exactly right, is that if you get an invite, somebody wanted to see you and somebody thought that you could do the part. And when you think about how many people do submit and you made that cut, like I just got almost 1,000 submissions for 3 roles, you're going, somebody wanted to see you. And so, there's all these many people. I think probably I ended up seeing maybe, 60 people in each category. That was a lot of culling down. And so I always tell people, take advantage of when you get called in to an audition, because I know, at least for myself and a couple of the colleagues I'm pretty close to, it's like, we're not wasting anybody's time. I always try to encourage that, because sometimes people just, let's just throw them in. I'm like, no, only throw them in if you really want to see them and you think they have an opportunity to get this, because why drive somebody in if they don't have like a fighting chance for the role?
Exactly.
So
anyway, correct. Oh my goodness. Well, yes, that is amazing. I mean, I'm definitely in awe of all the time that you spend in seeing everyone. And so just on behalf of all actors, thank you so much for all that time that you spend seeing everybody, because, for sure that is great to see and to know that all the effort that we put into also, being ready and having our equipment and all that is just, working with you. And then so many times, like we get so nervous. We get less nervous, I guess, when we're on, self-taping than that we were when we go there, because, you're thinking, I don't know what, so many things that go through an actor's mind, like as though the director or if the client is there, and it makes us more nervous. But actually, it's you guys want us to do well, because you want to be presented with all those possibilities, right? You want more good people to choose from. So
I always tell people that is like, and again, I went through a gamut of casting directors that I went, oh my gosh. I had one experience where I took a day off from work. I flew to Dallas for an audition. I was very excited about it. I rent a car and I go to the audition, and I was always told, be about business. All right. This is a professional opportunity. So I went in, it was a SAG, a union shoot. So I went in, I signed in, and I went and sat down. I didn't, socialize with anyone. I rehearsed. And then I just opened a book and started reading, and I just sat there quietly. And somehow or the other, I was overlooked until they were like, oh my gosh, what's your name again? And, it was probably past, the half hour that you're supposed to be kept there an hour. So I remember I get ushered in right away, and I get asked for my headshot, and they look at my headshot and they slam it down. And she's like, how old are you? And so I give her my age. She goes, well, you don't look it. And at that time, I knew my audition was over, effectively over. So anyway, I did my audition. I thanked him, walked out, signed out, got back in my car, drove to the airport, got back in the plane, and I landed. It was about 4:30. I remember calling my agent and asking, hey, when you could actually walk in and go talk with your agents. So I said, hey, do you have a few minutes? I'd love to come back in and talk to you about what happened today. I took it as a lesson. I said, okay. I sat down before and I'm like, okay, let's talk about submitting me for things that I have a fighting chance for. I said, because today this is what happened. And I said, so again, I don't know, she could have, it was one of the ones at the end, whatever, but it didn't go well. And I don't want that to happen again. And so I loved it because she and I mapped up, let's talk about what I was strong in, let's talk about this and whatever. And just for the future, because I thought, I don't want that to happen again, and I can't help the way I look. I can't help that I was exactly the age you asked for, but I looked younger than that. I can't help any of that. You didn't even see my performance. And so I was, and I go back to that because I think that I learned from that, because when I started casting, I remember a talent saying, boy, you're still cheery and it's almost the end of the day. And I said, it's not your fault you have a 5:50 appointment, that you couldn't be here at 9:00 when I was fresh, it's like, it's not, you have to be the same for everyone throughout. You have to be patient. You have to be willing to help everyone through. And I think I'm a teacher at heart. So if someone's coming in, someone is struggling, someone is like, oh my gosh, I'm like, it's okay, let's try it again. Let's here, let's cut it here. Let's try it again, try this. And so I think that that's important, that when you come in, you do want to feel like, hey, they're rooting for me, or they wouldn't have called me in, A. And then B, it's like, I want you to look good because I want the client to say, you gave me good options. I'm not looking at this and thinking, oh my gosh, I'm not seeing anybody I like. And so it's as much a desire for us, for talent to do well, than for us to just say, okay, you're out of here. And like I said, I had a few experiences where it was, oh my gosh, what did she get from my slates? Like I said earlier. Yeah. But, I tried not to be that way. I tried to make every opportunity be a positive opportunity for people. And even if they did come in and they did not come in prepared, I've even sent people out and said, okay, why don't you get out, give yourself a little more time, go breathe, and come back in, so that, I give them another opportunity to shake it off and come in and do a better job. And that's all you can do, and then the rest is up to the actor in front of the camera. So I think I'm not one of those, one of those old school casting directors. And I did have an opportunity to work with that person who did that to me later as a colleague.
Wow.
And I remember telling her about it. She didn't even really remember it.
Oof.
And she was like, no. And I'm like, oh, I said, that must mean you did that too often. I told her. And she's like, no. But it was so funny because I could then tell her later on, I said, no, I took it as a learning experience. I said, I learned from that. And I grew from that. And I never allowed that to happen to me again. I wanted to be put into a position to succeed. And so, through adversity, you grow. So,
yeah, you definitely do. Yes. My goodness. That was amazing. So how can people follow you? Do you have a place where you put casting notices to make it easier? But because, of course, it's mostly through agents, right? But people can also self-submit to you, or how does it work?
I haven't, and I have been trying to get my website back up again. I haven't had it up in a while, with the advent of all of the, casting places that people can upload their pictures to, and their resume and their media and such. It didn't seem like it was something that I needed to do right away. And so I put it off, and I really should do it, because I would love to have a place where I could have, especially people who want to do smaller projects or want to do some extra work just starting out. Now, I do have a Facebook casting page. It's just called Brenda J. Ambrize-Casting, and I post projects there. If it's something that's a little bit different, or I need somebody that's a little unusual, I may put that, like, I'm looking for a bodybuilder, or I'm looking for somebody who can ride a horse, or I need, a kid who can skateboard. I may put that out there too. And I do have a nice number of people on that. I also, because many times agents don't really want to bother with the extras. They may submit, but that's not really where they want to put their energies. So I would put, hey, I need 10 extras, and this is what it's paid job. And, and so I have I had a nice number of people that always submitted for that. And I always tried to honor their willingness to do that, because many times actors don't think about doing extra work. And I get it. I get there's a place where you're like, I'm not going to do extra work anymore. But if you're a working actor and you want to stay busy and you want to be on set, there's opportunities out there to work. If it's in your neighborhood, if you're not having to drive, I've had people drive in crazy amounts to be an extra. And I thought, if I knew you lived there, I probably wouldn't have picked you, because I'm thinking about, the driving in and such. So I do post there, and I have an email that they can self-submit to. I do have an Instagram. I'm not necessarily very active on it. So I would say that probably that's where I do most of my posting there. Is
Your
on
Facebook
page. Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So if it's okay, I can post a link to it in the show notes.
Absolutely.
So people can do that and look at it. And of course, people that especially live, around San Antonio, Houston, Austin, all that area. Wonderful. Okay, Brenda, thank you so much. This has been amazing. You answered a lot of my questions, and I know the questions of a lot of actors that are listening or watching this interview. Is there anything that you would like to say, as a piece of advice for people, for actors, more than what you've already said already, but, something that you would have liked to hear in, like, when you started your career as a performer and as a casting, like, just as a whole in the industry, what is something that you can share with people?
I would think, because when I first got into it, like I said, it wasn't as, it still seemed like there were so many layers between me and where I want it to be. And so I think now I would tell actors just to take advantage of every opportunity, every advantage that they have. I mean, like, now you can actually, people who want to do their own scripted things and they're tired of waiting for something that they can do. I have seen actors write and produce and act in their own short films. I've seen them do features. YouTube channels. So I think that there's so many avenues out there to promote yourself, to keep working when there is no work. If there's a slow period and auditions aren't coming your way, there's ways to participate in your local theater, to maybe check out what local universities are doing, because they're looking for actors to help them with their thesis and with their final projects. Yeah. But I think of anything, just to be confident in who you are and to work on your craft. And I know that people say that all the time, but it's like, if you are serious about what you love and you want to do something, even if, like Nikki, you and I, who have acted in our own markets, we've done some amazing things, we've done some small things, but it was something that we loved doing, so we just did it. Even if we will never be striding across the stage and collecting our Oscar, right? It was still something that was so important to us. Then you work on those things that you love. You put the time in, you put the energy in. You don't do it by halves. You put everything into it. And I think that sometimes we want things, but we don't want to put the work into attaining them. And I would say that majority of actors do, but I always have told actors, consider whether there's something you love and you want to do and you would love to do, be a working actor and live, or is it a hobby? Because if it's a hobby, then, you want to do it today and then tomorrow I don't want to do that anymore. So I would say that I always reached high, but I was also satisfied with the hurdles that I cleared. I was always happy that I put my time into this and was happy with how it came out. And so I think that we have to hang on to that, look back and gauge yourself on what you're doing and what you're achieving, and not compare yourself to others, because we're all different. I could never be an influencer to save my life, just too much work, you know what I'm saying? But good for them if that's what they want to do. But I love when you see, people working on things that make them happy, whether it's a short film that they do. I worked with a young lady who did as a tribute to her grandmother. She did this really wonderful short film, and I thought to myself, that was like something that she wanted to do. That was like a dream that she had of putting something out there, even if it's something she never does again. But it was so she made goals, and so I think it's like set doable goals with the big one there, but keep making little strides to reach what you want to do. And I think that then you will be happy with where you are, and you'll keep striving, but you won't be unfulfilled because I think in this field we can feel unfulfilled. Yes, but I think but you've done this and you've done this and I've never done that and you've done that. That's like amazing. And so I think if we can set realistic goals and then set the higher goals and then just keep taking those strides to them, I wish somebody would have said that, because I wanted to hit it. I wanted to hit the ball, the home run. I wanted to hit the touchdown from the get-go, and judging myself on how many callbacks I got back or how many jobs I booked. And that's just a part of who I was as an actor, or who I am as a casting director, who I am as a producer. I always felt like what's going to be mine is mine. So I'm going to work on getting what's mine. So I think...
Exactly. Well, I think that's
been
wonderful
my mantra.
Advice. Wonderful advice. So true, definitely. And there's so much we can do nowadays with technology. You could start a podcast.
Yes.
You can do anything, web series on YouTube. I mean, there's so many things. So definitely, I think you're right. And you also shed a light on what you can see or like your range and what you can do. And it just helps to reference people, either casting directors or producers, to that sort of work. And then they're like, oh, look at that, and they see more of you, your personality and everything you're able to do. And also if you're someone who has started producing something, you also have that other side of the business, that aspect. And then when you are on set, finally, when you book something, then you work better with everyone there, with the team, because now you can relate and the amount of work that it takes to produce something,
Right.
And so I think that's wonderful.
I think no one does what we do and doesn't know how hard it's going to be to do what it is. You can study, but there is just that little something, and I always love it when I see an actor. I'm like, they have that people always say the je ne sais quoi, but I'm like, they just have that spark, and you're going, there is a ton of talented people that never perhaps reached what we think is the pinnacle of success. But I think there's so many incredibly talented people that are doing so many wonderful things in their backyards, and that's what brings joy to people. That's, when you go see a local play, when whatever it is, whether it's music or it's film or it's theater, it's there's somebody bringing joy to somebody who's sitting in an audience, And so I think that there's so many opportunities now, and I'm going, if you're frustrated and it's because you're not getting out there and just like, what am I going to do to break this one barrier, and how can I get past this barrier so that I'm on the next step, and you can look back and say, I was there, but I'm not there anymore. Here's where I am. And I love when I've seen people do that, they break through and you're going, they weren't okay with just status quo. They decided, I'm going to get out there and I'm going to do it.
Yeah, exactly. Well, thank you so much again, Brenda.
Absolutely.
That was, wonderful advice. And so I'm going to put the link to your Facebook page there, and people can follow you and see what you have going on, and maybe, apply to whatever comes up to them. And anyway, just on the other hand, we'll just keep working on our self-tapes and trying to read all those instructions exactly how it is so that we can help our beautiful casting directors do their job properly.
I would appreciate that, Nikki.
Sure.
I think a lot of us would appreciate that.
Yes. Oh, yes, for sure.
Thanks for joining us on La Pizarra. Want to listen to more episodes? Visit lapizarrapodcast.com or nickimondolini.com/La Pizarra, where you can sign up for our newsletter and get exclusive previews of future episodes, as well as resources for your creative business. Tune in next week for another interesting interview.